What do you get when you travel down 120 miles of dirt road at 65 miles an hour in the rain in British Columbia? Stay tuned.
Bragger, this is the truck and tanker Yanker. I'm 10-8 with my 10 in the wind. My heaters are glowing, my manners are showing. Wind her up and let her go, come on. I'm your travel agent with a story to tell. Let's go for a ride.
Hey, it's your truck and tanker Yanker. Just want to tell you a story about going to Alaska with a load of motor oil. It was during the longshoreman strike, and this has been a few years ago, probably about 2003 or so. The longshoreman strike on the west coast. Most of Alaska get their cheapest stuff comes via barge on the ocean, and a lot of that loads out in Seattle. Well, anyway, long story short, or I should say a short story long, I had, this is when I had my own company. I had some tankers, and I had a brand new trailer in Billings, Montana, and I had a brand new trailer waiting for me in Portland, Oregon. So Darren Borio and I, he was my safety and maintenance manager, a good man. He and I decided, since this was going to be a fun trip, we bid this trip going to Anchorage with a load of motor oil, Pennzoil motor oil, and I just stuck my normal rate on it, plus the extra cost. I think it cost $300 for a plate in to get into Alaska, and it cost extra money for fuel in Canada. I just put that in the top of my normal radius rate, and we came out cheaper than everybody else, because I think everybody was trying to gouge them, because everybody in Anchorage was hard up for goods and services. So anyway, this was like September, I think, of 2003, I think. Something like that. Might have been 2002, don't remember. Anyway, so I bobtailed to Portland to go get the trailer in Portland, and Darren pulled the trailer. I don't know, maybe it's the other way around. I can't remember which. Anyway, I think I had the trailer. Doesn't even matter. We went to Portland. We had two trailers. We loaded Pennzoil in Portland, because that's where you load it over there. And then we headed up to Anchorage. So we get up to Prince George, British Columbia, and then we go due west there to New Hazelton. And then from New Hazelton, it's a dirt road. This was a short way. It's a dirt road from New Hazelton up to the Alcan Highway in the Yukon. And I'm pretty sure it was around 120 miles of dirt road. And it was raining, and you know, it was a nice, smooth dirt road. We were doing 65 miles an hour, so that was all my trucks were governed for. So it was about 65 miles per hour, and we kicked up a fine spray of mud and dirt and everything like that, and it was all over the bull of his. Darren, he was behind me. He could hardly see out his windshield. We was putting window wash fluid in his thing. He hung back far enough so he didn't get too much mud on the windshield, but when we pulled over and took pictures, you could see there was just, all there was just one spot for him to look out. Otherwise, it was all pasted with dirt and everything. But anyway, so we went up there, and there was a little bridge. There was a one-lane bridge going over a raging river, and the river wasn't that wide, maybe 50 feet across at the most, but it was like, I don't know what the highest, you wouldn't want to take a kayak down it unless you were an expert, I'll just tell you that much. But anyway, we had to stop right there, and I was the head guy in line. There was only two of us in line, me and Darren, and they were working on the bridge. And it was a one-lane bridge. It was all made out of big, heavy timbers and stuff like that. Even the part you drove on was timbers and that type of thing. So anyway, the road crew was working on it, and the gal holding the sign there, she was kind of acting diffident, basically trying to ignore me and that type of thing. And so she's standing right outside my window, and it was like, well, you know, rather than trying to ignore her, I'll just be friendly. And I know that a lot of people tend to think that truck drivers are only after one thing, but that wasn't what was on my mind, but I figured that was probably what was on her mind. Anyway, so I just rolled down my window and smiled, and I said, hunting very good around here? and she just like opened up like a flower, I guarantee you. Anyway, she was talking about she got her moose, and she saw a bear this morning, got hit by a log truck. You know, I mean, I just heard all the local, you know, stuff that was going on. Is there any fish in the creek? And salmon all over the place. And, you know, anyway, so she told me basically her hunting and fishing life story. And we just swapped yarns that way until finally the road crew was going to let me through. Anyway, and I'll tell you what, when I drove, I had probably about that much clearance on either side of my tires. It was a narrow bridge, and the road crew, they didn't even get off the bridge. They just sat on the edge with their feet dangling over, and they're eating a sandwich and stuff like this. And so I just kind of went slow to make sure I didn't knock any road crew off into that raging creek. Anyway, got through there, got up to the Yukon, and once I got on the paved road, it's like, holy schmoly, they should have turned that into a dirt road, because the paved road was at 65 miles an hour. I'm not kidding you. I had a Volvo truck, and at 65 miles an hour, I bounced my head off the ceiling more than once. That's how rough the road was. That dirt road was smooth by comparison. Anyway, so we got into Alaska and got our permits and stuff paid for at the Tok, Alaska, where the scale was at. And anyway, he called us a bunch of flatlanders. And it's like, I don't think that guy had ever been to Montana. It's not flat. And we got plenty of hills. I'd tell you what, just gross 132,000 pounds and go from Billings, Montana to the High Line, what we call the High Line, Highway 2 up there. Got, well, you know, Shelby's up there, you got Chinook, you got Havre, you know, all a bunch of towns along. From there, you got to go through the Missouri River breaks. You know, I mean, average speed was probably, that's counting the downhills at 75, you know, 45 miles an hour is probably average speed. And we didn't really do 75 on the downhill, but if you do go a little faster downhill and you do go uphill. Anyway, so he called us flatlanders, and that made him feel good, I think. So anyway, we got to, I got to Palmer, Alaska. I think it's somewhere between Palmer and Anchorage is where the scale is. And I went through the scale, the weighmaster hollered at me on the radio, and he said, those brand new trailers you boys got? And I said, yeah. I'm like, they're just totally covered with dirt and mud and spray and everything like that. And he's like, those got to be the prettiest outfits in Alaska. And I'm like, you can see underneath all that mud? He goes, oh yeah. He says, up here nobody hardly ever washes anything. Yours, at least you can see it's a fresh coat of mud. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. We got our loads delivered, and we headed out of there. And since we were headed to Montana, we took kind of a different route home. We went, instead of going back down towards the Portland direction, we went across to northern Alberta, and we come down towards Grand Prairie, and like we're heading towards Edmonton. And I think it was before we got to Grand Prairie, I just remember a big old mountain pass, and I come around a curve, and there was a whole bunch of bighorn sheep standing in the road, and probably about 6 or 8, something like that. And it was sheer rock wall going up on my right, and a sheer drop off going on my left, and there weren't no guardrail or nothing like that. And I tell you what, the bighorns, they just looked at me just like that, made eye contact with me, and I'm not kidding you, a whole herd just jumped right off the cliff, just like that. And it's like, as I was driving by, I looked down, seeing if I could see them, and because I didn't think they were dumb enough to jump to their death, you know. But if you ever seen those kind of critters, they can go up a pretty near sheer rock wall, and those guys apparently had been used to it, and they just jumped off like it was nothing, like they had parachutes on or something. So I never could see them. It was that steep, I couldn't see straight down. But also up in that area, I saw an Alaskan moose. So we saw some caribou and things. I didn't see any moose in Alaska, but we saw some caribou, and I think they call them wood caribou. But a couple of them ran out in front of the road in front of us and that type of thing, and kind of sparked up my interest to go. When I was a kid, I always wanted to go hunting in Alaska, but boy, I tell you what, if you're not from Alaska, or you're not in Alaska, it costs a lot of money to go hunting in Alaska, I guarantee you that. So anyway, but we were up there in northern Alberta somewhere before we got to Grand Prairie, and I was the big old berm on the right side of the road. I don't know if you can hear that whistle. I'm at a refinery right now, and they're doing all their practice whistles, and that's the reason why you can hear it. Yeah, hopefully there's not a real emergency. Anyway, so as I was driving along, there was a big old berm on the right side of the road, and an Alaskan moose come up over top of that berm and jumped down into the road right in front of me, and was running straight down the road in front of me and on my side of the road. And of course I hit the brakes, and I slowed down to about 30 miles an hour, which is about as fast as he was going. And I'm in a big truck, right? And that moose turned his head and looked at me. He just looked over his shoulder to look at me, and he was looking straight into my eyes. I don't know how high off the ground I am. More than 6 feet anyway. But he was straight looking into my eyes. I'm probably closer to 8 feet off the ground. And he turned and looked straight into my eyes. That impressed me. He was big. And, you know, I've seen pictures of 65-inch spreads and that type of thing. It wasn't 65 inches, but I'll tell you what, it's the biggest thing I ever saw in real life. And, it was over 50 inches. I would pretty much guarantee that. Anyway, so I was really impressed with that. Wish I could have gotten a picture. Anyway, and he was just running down the road, and then he just turned left and went off the other side of the road and over the top of that burn. And I hollered at Darren, who's behind me on the radio, and I said, "Hey, Darren, did you see that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw that." I says, "I'm impressed." And he goes, "Me too," and because he's a hunter too. And anyway, so we this is like I said, it was 2002, 2003. I can't remember which year. And so that's after 9/11, the towers came down and all the border stuff changed a great deal after that. So we get to the U.S. border at Sweetgrass, Montana, and they were still building, some of you might be familiar with that port at Sweetgrass and how big and fancy it is now. And at one time, all it was a bunch of chicken coops over there, and they were building that port when I came through there at that time. So we went up to a chicken coop. Basically, chicken coop is just a small building. We call them chicken coops because just a small building and just about hold 1 or 2 men in it or something like that. Anyway, I drove up to the chicken coop, and well, just to presage this a little bit, Darren's from Wisconsin, all right? And in the office, you could always tell when the Green Bay Packers was playing a game because Darren would have his green t-shirt on that had a great big yellow G in the middle of it, and he'd wear cheese on his head, and he did all sorts of crazy Green Bay Packer stuff. We all know about those guys. The Badger State people are kind of different that way, and very proud of the Green Bay Packers. So I'm ambivalent, and I think I liked the Washington Redskins when I was a kid, and it's because I like red. There you go. And anyway, that was my sole determining factor as to who my favorite team was. Anyway, so anyway, we get to the border there. I drive up to the chicken coop, and the guy says, "You got a passport and this, that, and the other thing?" I go, "No, I got my driver's license." And he said, "Your driver's license?" He says, "Don't you realize that we had a situation here a little bit ago, or however long ago it was, 911?" And he says, "You got to have more information on. You got a birth certificate? You got a passport? You got anything identification like that?" "No, I just got my driver's license." He goes, "How do I know that you're a U.S. citizen?" Because he had asked me if I was a citizen. I said, "Yeah." He goes, "How do I know if you're a U.S. citizen?" And I go, "Because I was born here." I didn't have a really good answer. I was like, "I don't know. How do you prove? I got a drive." He says, "Anybody can get a driver's license. Illegal aliens get driver's license." I'm like, "Well, he's right about that." So anyway, he said, "Well, where were you born?" And I said, "Oregon City, Oregon." And he said, "What's the capital of Oregon?" And I said, "Salem." He goes, "Okay. What's the capital of Washington?" I said, "Olympia." And he goes, "Ha, a lot of people think it's Seattle." I go, "Well, it's not. It's Olympia." And I said, "Those weren't even hard." And I said, and I said to him, I says, "How about the capital of Rhode Island? Do you know the capital of Rhode Island?" He goes, and I says, "It's Providence." I said, "Now who's the American?" And he's like, "All right, get out of here. Get out of here. Don't come back without identification next time." All right. Oh, I said, "Okay, thank you." And, just be polite and go. And so anyway, I went and I pulled up ahead over there where all the construction stuff was and waited to see if Darren was going to make it through. Anyway, Darren spent a shorter amount of time than me, and they let him go. And so I hollered at him on the radio, and I says, "Did he give you the 3rd degree?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Did he ask you for proof that he was an American?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "How'd you prove it?" He goes, "I held up my Green Bay Packers credit card." And the guy said, "Get out of here and don't come back." Anyway, so that's how Darren proved he was an American. He had a Green Bay Packers credit card. I didn't even know they made such a thing. But that was a pretty good trip, and I really enjoyed that trip. I took a lot of pictures, and when I think back fondly on all the places I've been, that trip to Alaska in September of one of them years, 2002 or 2003, has got to be one of the high points of my truck driving career. And I actually tried to bid Holland Pennzoil to those people. I had to try to beat the barge rate, and the only way I could meet the barge rate, and that was my break-even cost. I'd have to find something else to haul back or something like that, and you know, it was just too difficult to try to find a way to, so I could just get rid of all my trucks and leave just one with little old Dennis driving it and going to Anchorage all the time. That would have been my dream job year-round. Anyway, oh hey, one thing, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, give me a thumbs up. You know, if you like this and you like more family-friendly content, ask me questions. I got answers. Sometimes my answers, I don't know, but I got answers. So hey, give me a shot. I'm the Truck and Tanker Yanker. Take her easy. Keep the shiny side up and the dirty side down. Look on past your hood ornament, and don't be a bumper sticker. All right? All right. We gone.